This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
I just received a letter from a student who thanked me for instilling the love of math in him. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Every time that we have This Week in Richmond, and we welcome those all of our viewers, we have special programs. Well, today I would say it's extra special because we have two pages from the Senate. One, the Honorable Clarence A. Holland, who was a Senate page, and Hannah Gilden, a current Senate page. And Senator Holland, people recognize your name and they know you, and they know that you served in the Senate from 1984 through 92. So 96 served 3 terms.
Yes, right.
And Hannah, they just now are meeting you as one of this year's Senate pages. But Senator Holland, when you were here not too long ago at the Capitol and had an opportunity, that the Senate pages had an opportunity to hear from you, I got the idea right then that we needed to have you on talking about what it was like to be a page in the Senate in 1944.
Right.
And then if we could have the privilege of having Hannah with us to give some comments and contrast on what it's like in 2016. Right. So you start us off and talk about 1944, because you weren't the first person from your family to be a page.
No, I wasn't. I had an older brother who had been a page in the House of Delegates. And of course, once I became a page in the Senate, I certainly had to put him down.
Yes.
As you in the House, I'm in the Senate.
Right.
And so I enjoyed that kind of an argument.
Right.
But everything back in 1944 was done in the Capitol. The committee meetings, the delegates and senators did not have offices. Their desk was the office. And there were 8 pages. 8 of us, and 2 of them I ended up with longtime friends, went to college together. And back then there's a lot of things that are not permitted now, such as smoking, maybe occasional alcohol would be on the floor but not known, but not a whole lot of that, certainly nowadays. And if you have time for a quick story.
Yes.
That I loved and told the pages when I spoke to them, that I was living during my time with the aunt and uncle who lived up here in Richmond. And I came home and I had these dark places down my pants leg, or just on one pants leg. And my aunt said, "Would you spilling that coffee you bring from up and down in Chickens up to the floor in china cups, as a matter of fact, and you're spilling it all over that right leg." And I said, "I don't remember, but yes, ma'am, I'll be more careful." Well, it turned out several other pages happened to have the same thing. And we finally figured out that Lieutenant Governor Bill Tuck at the time, chewed tobacco.
Ah,
And they were allowed spittoons.
yes.
And he would not lean over. He would spit at the spittoon. It would glance off, and the pages sitting down front
man.
would get their pants legs covered. So one of those unusual stories that you can remember for a long time.
Yes. Now you said they didn't have offices, did all the work in the Capitol. So did they do the work at their desk in the chamber?
Absolutely. They had that, and at that time, you're thinking back, the secretaries were down on the first floor, and they used carbon paper to type out the bills and have a copy of it with carbon paper, which people don't even know what it is today. But it was just, the committee meetings were down there in the first floor of the Capitol, and some of those large meetings down there that the House used to use, I don't know whether they still do or not, but they were half the size that they are now. Mm-hmm. So it was a crowded, and of course people smoked in the rooms. We talk about rooms, the back rooms with a lot of smoke and so forth. You had a whole lot of it down there then because nearly everybody smoked.
Yes.
It was unreal.
Yes, and when you were a page, there wasn't really a budget that was worked out from the Senate. That came along later.
That's right.
Much later.
Yes, sure did. Yeah. No, we didn't have any of the finances and so forth. We had a committee, I believe, but it didn't have anything to do with setting up the governor's budget and approving or disapproving until it came to the floor already by the House.
Hannah, let's get you in on the conversation some too. Your granddad and I could talk the entire time. You'd be wondering, why does he have me sitting here? I'm not talking. So you're a page here in 2016.
Yes.
So why did you want to be a page?
Well, I thought it'd be like a great opportunity, and since he told me about it, and I thought it'd be super cool and see how the Senate works and how like bills are made. And
well, we're having this conversation when the session's almost over. When you're back at home and seeing this on TV, the session will have ended. But let me ask you now, what are some of the things that you think you've learned during this time?
Oh, I definitely think I've learned how like all the bills are made and how fun it. I think it's fun to, or I don't know.
Had the debate over.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I really like watching the committees, having public come and talk to some of the senators.
Yeah. So Clancy, going back to you, what was the process back then to get to be named a page? We know now that someone could go on a website here at the Capitol and they can get information about being a page. They can find about getting an application, someone to sponsor them. But how was it back when you were served as a page?
You had to be sponsored by a senator. Mm-hmm. And as I said, there were only 8 of us for the 40 senators at that time. But the senator from Alloway County, where I lived, was the one who sponsored me. And as a 14-year-old, I heard of a small town and country. I wasn't too sure about what I was getting into, but I did have a brother who had done it. And if he could do it, I knew I could.
Right,
There wasn't any question, that competition. And Enjoy even told the pages that the senator who appointed me lived about 15 miles from my town. And on one Sunday, he offered to let me drive him at the age of 14 from Smithfield, Virginia, up here to Richmond on 2-lane roads. That was a lot of trust back then.
Yes. I'm sure you did fine.
We got along all right.
You did fine. And you had to, I guess, find your own accommodations
Yes.
at that time in contrast to now.
You had no things like study halls. You didn't all live in one place. Some of the people lived in what was the Hotel Richmond across from the Capitol then. And of course, this General Assembly building wasn't even utilized back then. And it was an insurance company here. Grand Ole Opry was on the corner of 9th and Broad Street and so forth. And so you did not get out into town. But living with an aunt and an uncle was a delight. They were good to me and put up with a lot.
Well, when you mention chickens, that brings back lots of memories.
Doesn't it?
And it really does. And for people who were here at the Capitol before the renovation time,
Yes.
can remember that site and remember even the woman that got the nickname for it. Yeah.
One of the proudest things I did while I was a senator, and it was unfortunately, but just prior to her death, I put in, she was retiring from the food part, and she was retiring, and I put in a resolution congratulating her for all of her years. She was working in the little coffee shop type place in 1944. It was about when she started.
Wow. Wow.
So she was still here in 1985, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard stories about chickens
Yes.
over in the Capitol?
She was a piece of work.
Yes.
A delightful piece, but
Yes.
you knew where you stood when you talked to her.
Some of the best limeades in town.
Absolutely.
Right.
And milkshakes.
And milkshakes too.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, yes. Well, I can also visualize when I think about chickens, former Delegate Harvey Morgan, who had a pharmacy that about once a year toward the end of the session, he'd go back behind the counter and make the milkshakes.
That's
And
right,
so
he did.
Yeah.
That's right.
he did.
Oh, it was he was at the same college that I went to.
Hannah, as your granddad, there were only 8 of them. You've got a much larger number now. So what are the tasks that you typically do? You might even tell our viewers, thinking about any particular day, what's kind of a day in the life of a Senate page now?
Oh, well, I personally love being on the floor because I love getting the senator's lunch because you always get to get out of the floor and walk around and go to
Right.
and it's just very fun, and they always give you tips. So.
Yes. Yes.
They gave you tips? I don't believe we got any of those.
Well, I was one thing I was going to ask you because I've heard that, and I've heard at times without names being mentioned, there's some very good tippers, and then there are others who are tippers.
That's right. And some that maybe aren't so good. No, we didn't get any tips, but the biggest thing I told the pages earlier was a Senator Pitts from up in Fredericksburg owned several theaters.
Ah.
And he gave all of us a card with the dates on them for the 260 days we were up here. And you could go to one movie every day if you wanted to, and all you had to pay was the tax. And we thought, 1944, out of a small town, movies were the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you probably didn't have to go very far on Broad Street at that time to find one of the theaters.
Well, you had the National Theater,
Right.
that's just down there. And we had to be careful, of course, back then. They even had chorus girls in the National Theater at certain times. So that was not something pages necessarily should be seen at. And of course, the Lowe's Theater is right down the street. So it was, you could go to a movie every day if you had the time or could get away with it.
Hannah was telling us something about her typical day and the part she enjoyed. I'm sure you told the Senate pages this. What would a day in the life of a page be like in the 1940s?
And the 40s, you showed up at 8 o'clock. I'd ride the streetcar from my aunt and uncle's house down here to the Capitol. It came right down Broad Street. And we'd get off here at 9th and Broad, walk over to the Capitol, and from there you never went outside because there wasn't any other business offices outside, so you stayed right within the Capitol. And we all stayed on the floor because that's where their offices were, with the desk.
Right.
And if they wanted a copy of a bill that had been put in, they'd get us to run downstairs and get the bill and bring it back up to them so they could read and see if it was typed correctly and so forth before they went before the committee. So everything was done right there. We went for drinks and lunches and, as I say, whatever else they needed. Of course, we always complained about being in the smoky rooms, because even then you would have maybe 8, 10 people to come and speak on some bills. Some there were no people to speak, but on some of them there'd be maybe 7 or 8 people sitting around the wall, and the senators and the people sitting around the wall sitting there smoking. So the small rooms got a little crowded for us pages, and that's the only complaint we really had.
So did that in any way make you decide what profession you would be going into? Help treat people's illnesses?
I don't know whether that had any, but being a physician, I understood exactly what I was talking about when I was talking about tobacco.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then fast forward to 1984.
Right.
And and thinking even about the tobacco, the time you were here is when Governor Wilder was willing to sign a bill that you all sent to him as the first of Virginia's indoor clean air acts
Right.
at that time.
That's right. That brought up a lot of discussion, in
sure
particular
did.
with your tobacco companies that are here. Were, I don't know whether they still are or not, but we're here in Richmond in particular. The lobbyists were strong against that thing. They didn't think that was necessary. Didn't care about what the health things were, that they were talking about. It was, we won't be able to sell as many tobacco products. And so that was a part of it then. But it came across, and I think most everybody understood by that time, because the tobacco lung cancer thing probably came in the late 50s, I believe it was. And it's when all the emphasis came along.
Yeah, after the time that the GIs and everyone were given cigarettes as a part of what they would get each day.
Particularly during World War II.
Yes. Yes.
You could send a carton, and you'd done a great thing for the soldier.
So Clancy, what then made you decide to run for the Senate those years later? I know that we were talking before we started about your being some in local government.
Well, I had. I'd been asked as a physician in the community. I'd been there for maybe 7 years, and I was asked would I run for the city council. And so I did. Virginia Beach was growing by leaps and bounds at the time, and I wish I could tell you exactly what the population was then, probably 170, 180,000 maybe. It's now 400,000, but back then, and my father was a delegate in the House of Delegates from 1946 to 1966. And so I had a little bit of the vaccination of the same needle, that I should be a part of my community, not just a physician, but to be a part that had to do with the regulation and the building of your community, which I still enjoy and think a whole lot about. And that's how I got started. Stayed on the city council for 12 years. Waited 1 year out, and then ran in '84 for the, '83 for the Senate to start serving in January of '84. So that's the way I got to it.
Right.
I already had a brother who was in the state Senate too.
I was going to say that when you were here, there were 3 Hollands.
That's right. And we had the newspaper people, had all 3 of us sitting on a couch one time. And there was Ed Holland from up in Northern Virginia, my brother Richard, who was from my hometown in a rural area, and then me from Virginia Beach, which was a growing community. Of interest of my brother and I, we went up against each other, against Virginia Beach getting water brought from Lake Gaston to Virginia Beach.
Right.
His district was Lake Gaston part, me, of course, Virginia Beach. And our mother saw us on TV arguing with each other about the bill, and you typically use a few snide remarks. Our mother called both of us and said, "Y'all have got to get along better than that." I said, "Mother, we argued more about who's going to ride the front seat of the car. We were more serious."
Right. Now, was he one of the ones that was a page in the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I had a younger brother who, once my father was up here in the General Assembly in the House of Delegates, my younger brother was also a page 1 year in the House. I was the only one in the Senate, of course.
Only one in the Senate. So you had to be in the Senate, right? Yeah, the Senate was the chamber.
I can't wait till the delegates hear this.
Yeah, right. Now, when you think back to those senators that you worked with as a page, or even some of your experiences, and again, maybe these are some I'm sure that Hannah's heard and you've told, what are some of the ones that stand out during that time? Some of the
Well, at that time, Senator Battle, who later became, of course, governor of Virginia, he was a senator. The senator who appointed me, Senator A.E.S. Stevens from Smithfield, he appointed me. He was lieutenant governor, did not make it to the governor's seat. But we had Senator Byrd from here in Richmond, who was a pharmaceutical company that he ran. Down in Norfolk was a Senator Breeden, who was here for a good while and rose to be rather influential. Golly, the unfortunate thing, we had a Senator Weaver, who was the majority leader back then, who passed away on the last night of the session.
Oh.
He lived down in the Jefferson Hotel, and on the last day, they took crepe and draped it over his chair to make us aware.
Yeah, that's something that you can't get that out of your mind.
No.
Yes,
No, Senator Dalton was one of the 3 Republicans that were here then too. And so he was the uncle of former Governor Dalton of Virginia.
right.
So they were people that, I would hear about, and like Tuck, you become governor and then you run for Congress. And, Governor Colga Dodd, one of the most shaky but fun places. At that time, only 8 pages. We had lunch with Governor Dodd in the mansion. Couldn't get 22 there, I'm sorry, Hannah.
Right. Yes. Well, Hannah, I warned you that your granddad and I would just not give you much time at all to talk. But before it all runs out and our program's over, any other thoughts? What would you say to someone who's watching who's a year or 2 younger than you, and might be thinking about being a page? What would you tell them?
I say to them that it's like a great experience, and I think when I come out of this, I'll be like changed and see things differently, and how bills are made, and definitely be on the Senate.
Yes, yes, okay. So you hear that out there. If you're 12 or 13 years old or even younger, it's something to aspire to. It's tough to get appointed. There's not that many who serve either in the Senate or in the House. So it's a distinct honor.
I'm sure that Hannah is a much better page than I was. She understood it and has more duties and more things to take care of than I ever had.
And the pages all stay together now, so they're in the hotel. So if some parent or grandparent out there is saying, "Well, where would they stay if they're there?" So they're in and they, as you said before, they have study hall now that you didn't have.
No,
so it has changed. Well, Hannah, thank you very much for coming on This Week in Richmond, and Clancy, I have to call you Clancy, but
please.
the Honorable Clarence A. Holland.
It's not necessary.
we thank you for being on and appreciate you all telling our viewers what it's like to be a page now and back then. So thank you both.
Thank you, David.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.